Now, today, let's start with a new sentence. Now, let's read from the Sutra. Now, what do you think, O Sariputra? For what reason is that repetition treatise of the law called the favor of the Buddhas, every son or daughter of a family who shall hear the name of that repetition of the law and retain in their memory the names of those blessed Buddhas, will be favored by the Buddhas and will never return again, being once in possession of the transcendent belief, accept and do not doubt of me and those blessed Buddhas. And because all the 6 directions praise, glorify the Amitabha's Pure Land, and Sakyamuni Buddha continue to repeat again that this is really a very good approach of enlightenment. Because if you depend only on your self-efforts for enlightenment, it will take a very long time. Given the business of your schedules and all the karmic energy that you have in this lifetime, you may not be able to achieve nirvana, to achieve enlightenment within one's lifetime. But if you take on the approach, recitation of Amitabha's name, always chanting Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha, chanting name all the time, having faith and having vow, and having the desire to go there and practice it, training your mind every day, at the juncture of death, you'll be received by the Buddhas. So this is just to repeat it again. If you do that training, repeat name, and you have to vow to go over there, then at the juncture of death, you'll be there. Now, there are 2 important merits of chanting Amitabha. The first merit is merit received in this life, by which we all will be protected by Bodhisattvas and Buddhas. It doesn't mean that if you chant Namo Amitabha or Namo Amitabha, then you have to die. No, that's not mean that. If you're always chanting Namo Amitabha, in this life, when you are alive, you have blessings and protection from all the Buddhas while you are alive. And when you at the juncture of death, there will be merits received in the next world after death, where all will be saved in the Pure Land. So in other words, you have both advantages. Next, whatever sons or daughters of a family shall make mental prayer for the Buddha country of the blessed Amitayas, the Tathagata. Amitayas means longevity also, immeasurable lifespan. Amitabha is light, symbolizes wisdom. So we should say prayers all the time, making sure that you have commitment and you will be born after death in that country. So, O Sariputra, mental prayer is to be made for the Buddha country by faithful sons and daughters of a family. That means you should also always say your prayers at that time, at the juncture of death. You have to train yourself to chant Namo Amitabha, make sure that you'll be received in that land. I remember last time we were talking about, we almost come to the end of this short sutra. There's maybe one more lecture to go, we'll finish it up. This is a short version of Sukhavati Vyuha. Sukhavati Vyuha means the land of bliss. Jilo Sije, Sukhavati Vyuha. There's another one, which is the larger Sukhavati Vyuha Sutra. Now, after we finish with the lecture, you should really explore more into the literature of Amitabha. Basically, there are 3 sutras that you should really be reading. This is just a short version of the larger sutra. And just to remind you, remember we have 3 significant sutras introducing Amitabha's Buddha, commonly called the 3 sutras of the Pure Land sect of Buddhism. The sutra on Amitabha,佛說阿彌陀經, translated by Kumarajiva. So that's the short version, which is also known as the smaller Sukhavati Vyuha. The second one, the Sutra of Visualization of the Buddha of Infinite Life, 佛说观无量寿经, translated by Kalayasa. This sutra is long. It contains very important information on how to meditate on the names. And then the third sutra, the Sutra on Amitabha's, 佛说无量寿经, translated by some government. We discover the Sanskrit version of these sutras, so they are sure to be authentic sutras. They're not fictitious sutras. There are sutras that are fictitious, created by later generations, but these three were actually authentic sutras, because archaeologists just about 200 years ago dug up from Nepal volumes and volumes of Sanskrit scroll, and these Sanskrit scrolls contain all these sutras. The one that we are studying right now is this one. We're almost finished, a very short version. So it is also called the smaller Sukhavati Vyuha. So this is a longer one, and this is also a long one too. In order to get some interest in what we're talking about, let's talk a little bit about the content of this one, the Sutra of Visualization of the Buddha of Infinite Life, which is also in short form, also known as the Meditation Sutra, Guan Jing in short form. Let me summarize it for you very briefly so that you know about this sutra. This sutra gave you a story, a true story of what happened in India at the time of Sakyamuni Buddha. At the time of Sakyamuni Buddha, there was a king in Magadha. There's a king, and his name is Bimbisara. Bimbisara, the king Bimbisara. And he had a son, Ajatasattu. That's the prince, his son. There's also a queen, Vaidehi, Vaitishi. So there's three personalities: Bimbisara, which is the king, who is the king, and also there is also the queen, which is Vaidehi. There's also the son, the prince, which is Ajatasattu. And when the queen was pregnant, a very famous astrologist in India told the king, while the Ajatasattu was still in his mother's womb, not yet coming out, the astrologist said, King Bimbisara, the baby inside queen's womb is your son, is a son. And if you allowed him to come out, he's going to kill you. He will be killing you in the future. So you should consider whether you should have an abortion or not. The king was worrying, This son that's going to come out will kill me. So, but should I believe in the astrologist? The queen, being loving her husband so much, was planning to take medicine to get an abortion, abortive medicine. She started to take abortive medicine because she didn't want the son to kill her husband when the son became the prince. But it did not matter how much medicine the queen swallowed, the baby still come out alive. So as time goes on, the Ajatasattu became a very cute teenager, a very lovable person, and the king Bimbisara loved him so much, very intelligent. But when he grew up to be about 30 years old, he planned on a usurpation. He wanted to overthrow the king. So the prince, Ajatasattu, imprisoned his own father, Bimbisara, and planned to starve him to death. So the king Bimbisara was in jail with chains all around him, and his son wanted to kill him by starving him to death, and also a lot of torturing too. It was believed that because of causality, he killed him before, and he came back to kill his father, which is to kill the king. King Bimbisara was starving in jail. The queen, Vaidehi, secretly brought food, honey, to the king by putting a lot of honey, very thick coat of honey on her skin. And then when she entered into jail, she scraped off all this honey and give honey food to the king. So the king was able to survive for a little while. So after a while, the prince, Ajatasattu, wanted to find out what happened, and he knew that his mom, the queen, secretly bringing honey to the king so that the king still will survive. And he got very angry. He was infuriated. And he rushed into the jail while the queen was visiting the king with a knife, and he attempted to kill his own mom, to kill the queen. But 2 ministers stopped him from doing so. One of the ministers said, "Don't do this, because according to the history of India, according to the Veda, book of Veda, no son, the prince, would kill his own mother. Well, there are records, a few records, that the son killed their father, overthrew the father, killed the father, and became the king. There are stories like that in the Indian history and in the Indian Veda literature, yes. But nobody attempted to kill his own mom, the queen. So don't do it. If you did that, that would bring bad luck to the country." So that stopped Ajatasattu from killing his own mom. So the prince went back to his palace and pondered on how to deal with this problem, whether he should execute the king right away together with mom, or what should he do. He wanted to cool down a little bit, so he went back to his palace. So the queen spent a day with the king, and the queen, Vaidehi, was so sad, so mournful. And she knelt down and facing Gridha mountain, where the Buddha was. Sakyamuni was at Gridha mountain. The vulture peak was lecturing in there. So the queen was leaning down and fervently say prayers to the Buddha to save them. And Sakyamuni Buddha was related to this family. So Sakyamuni Buddha sent Madhikayana and Parutta. Because why did he send the two disciples? They are arahats, because they had supernatural power. They can appear immediately in jail. Madhikayana, because he was famous with esoteric supernatural power. So he was able to appear in front of the king and the queen and gave them a lecture about karma, about rebirth, about sufferings. And then the next day, the queen said prayer again to Sakyamuni Buddha, and the queen said, this is a world of suffering. The son even killed his own father and mother. And the father being tortured in jail, and the mother is also being tortured emotionally. I don't want to be in this world. I want to leave this world. This is a world of suffering. So he prayed fervently to Buddha, and please show me, is there any land where there's happiness, where there's no such suffering happen to them? All the sentient beings will live happily there. I don't want to be in here anymore. So the Buddha started to give an exposition, expounded on the Pure Land. That starts up the Sutra. That's a Sutra of visualization of the Buddha of infinite life. To the west, there is a Buddha Amitabha, and is waiting to receive you into that land. So when you passed away, go to that land. This is not a land of happiness. This is a land of suffering. And then this is the story behind the sutra. And then the Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha, continued to explain how to get there, and he explained the 16 meditative methods to go there. So we also call it the 16 meditative sutras. What are the 16s? How to visualize, how to meditate together with the chanting of the Amitabha's name. There's 16 methods in it. So maybe in the future you should research into it. I'm summarizing this visualization for you. The first is to visualize the setting sun. The second is to visualize the purity of the water. The third one, visualize the ground of the Pure Land. The fourth one is to visualize the Pure Land's jewel trees. The fifth one is to visualize the Pure Land's jewel ponds. The sixth one is to visualize the Pure Land's jewel towers. The seventh one is to visualize on the lotus blooming, the purity of the lotus flowers blooming. Now I'm just giving you a summarization. There's details as to how to do it. We're talking about meditation, right? In meditation you have to visualize. And if you're chanting and visualize at the same time, you achieve that purity, that tranquility, that you can actually purify your karma and achieve that tranquility of mind at the juncture of death, and then you will go to that, people call it heaven. It does not matter how you call it. That's the land that we should go to. So the eighth is to visualize the image of Amitabha accompanied by Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. Right now, in that country, in that Pure Land, in that land of bliss, which is also called Sukhavati Vyuha, there is a whole assembly of saints in there. And there are two very famous saints in there that we know of. One is Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, Guan Pusa. The other one is Mahastamaprapta, Da勢至菩薩. So in other words, Amitabha is the professor. If I can give an analogy of a university, that's the professor in there. And there are two assistant professors. One is Guan Pusa, Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. The other one is Da勢至菩薩, assistant professor, Mahastamaprapta. 9, to visualize the full body of Amitabha. A Buddha has 3 bodies, you know. We call that Kaya. 报身 Sambhogagaya. 化身 Nimana Kaya. Third, 法身 Dhammakaya. So you have to visualize the full body, the Sambhogagaya of Amitabha. There are details in there. Maybe you should explore more into it. The 10th visualization is to visualize the image of Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. So if you are chanting Namo Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva and you want to go to the Pure Land of Amitabha, that's okay too. If you say, I want to chant just Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva and I want to make that vow to go to that land of bliss, that's okay too. Why? Because Avalokitesvara will be coming to receive your soul into that land too, because he is the assistant professor there. On the other hand, if you say, I have special relationship with Mahastamaprapta, the 12th visualization is to visualize one's own ascension to the Pure Land. To visualize that you are slowly ascending to the Pure Land after death. You visualize that process of you in your form slowly going to that Pure Land. 13, to visualize the multiple aspects of Amitabha's universal salvation. 14, to visualize the conditions of the 3 levels of petitioners going to the Pure Land. Remember, there are 3 levels of people, the qualities, there are 3 levels of people: the superior level, the intermediate level, and the inferior level. 上中下三级. If you're at the superior level, that means you're a very higher level in your training of chanting Amitabha. Intermediate level and the inferior level too. So you have to visualize which level, and you have to visualize all these 3 different levels have the qualifications, have the qualities of going over there. Not just the superior level, but also the inferior level. So there is a visualization like that. That's the 14th visualization. The 15th visualization, the 15 Guan, is visualizing the process of going to the Pure Land. The process is, how do I get there? Now I'm chanting, and then after chanting, when I'm dying, then I will be all free of all my mental afflictions. I will have no crying by my bedside. I will have no attachment to my properties, to my money. I will have no attachment to status, to reputation, to all these things. I will be free of all these attachments, and I'll be going over there. So there's a lot of visualizations to help you to free yourself of all these mental afflictions, because at the juncture of death, you will be attached to a lot of things emotionally, materialistically. So that's the 15th. The 16th is to visualize Amitabha and all bodhisattvas to coming in an assembly, ascending from the sky and receive you into the Pure Land. So there are 16 contemplations, 16 visualizations. That's the reason why the Amitabha's approach, the Pure Land approach, is a different school. It's a different sect of Buddhism, because it itself contains millions of literature just on how to get to the Pure Land. But most of them are written in Chinese, because over the centuries, there were a lot of researchers who are monks, research into this school, and they collected together a whole resourceful amount of literature just to tell us how to train ourselves to get to the Pure Land. Lots of them, they were in Chinese, but slowly they were being translated into English. And the trend is more and more people in North America, they're not only practicing meditation, they're also practicing on this heavenly approach of enlightenment. Because this heavenly approach is so in conformity with the other religions' heaven approach. Because the other religions' heaven approach is just faith. I believe in God and I can go to heaven. There's no exposition and detailed exposition on how to get there, how to train yourself to get there. Where is it? How does it look like? Get me more details. But in there, you have thousands of details in there. Right now, the treasure door is open in North America to North American people. Are they willing to look into it? Are they willing to explore more into it? It depends on us. It depends on all of us to tell them what happened. Because if they can get there, no more suffering for them. That's a bodhisattva's approach to enlightenment. If everybody, after they die, and we all have to die anyway, anybody who don't have to die, raise your hand, as I always said. If you don't have to die, raise your hand. Everybody has to die. But if you died, where else would you go? If you don't go there, where would you go? You would go with your karma to the next round of reincarnation. There are 6 rounds of reincarnation, remember? The 3 vicious, bad rams, and the 3 meritorious and non-vicious, virtuous rams. There are also people who reincarnated into humans again, or or guardian angels in heavenly realm. But that heaven is not the same as the Amitabha's heaven. That heaven still reincarnate. And this heaven, the Pure Land of Amitabha, is a non-retrogressive heaven. What does that mean? Once you get over there, you won't retrogress back to the cycle of reincarnation again. But you're not the Buddha yet. If I can give you an analogy of a university, that's the university of non-retrogression to life and death. When you're born in there, you don't have to come back to this karmic world. But you're not the Buddha as yet. You still have to learn. You're just a student of non-retrogression to this karmic world. You're a student in there, and you learned under the protection and the blessing of the Buddha, of Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, and of all the other saints until you become the Buddha. And once you become the Buddha, you may have unfinished business because you want to come back to this world to save all your relatives, your friends, your folks. You want to save the whole world, then you come back again. That's the reason why there's so many saints coming back to this world. not in the form of a monk, sometimes maybe in the form of a politician, sometimes maybe in the form of a philanthropist. A lot of people come back to this world from the Pure Land on their own vow, on their wish. Because when you come back at that time, you are in better control. Because you won't be led astray. You could reincarnate into this world, like in the Christian faith, or the Roman Catholic faith, as Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa saved a lot of sick people in India. She is a Bodhisattva. She's just in a different form. So that's the reason why we respect all the other religions too, because they will be the Buddha. They will be Bodhisattvas. And once you're in that world, in that Buddha country, you continue to learn. And maybe before you become fully enlightened, you can take a leave of absence too. You take a leave of absence saying, I'm going back there. I haven't attained nirvana yet, but I like to contribute. I like to give. I like to come back to be a compassionate person, helping all my folks. You can make that decision on an application to Amitabha Buddha. I'm giving you an analogy. That happened. So we all have to die anyway. After death, we don't want to roll into the next suffering again. As I always give an analogy, our body is like a hotel, an apartment. This apartment is on a lease. This lease is not a long-term, indefinite lease. This is a lease of at the most 100 years. Some unlucky fellows may only have a 10 years lease, 20 years lease, 30 years lease. You only think that old people die? You visit hospitals. There are a lot of youngsters in there. The teenagers in there. The middle-aged people in there. Not just old people die, you know. Everybody is subject to death. It's not being pessimistic. It's a fact of life. Usually, people don't think of that. They are in constant pursuit of materialistic lifestyle. They're always in constant pursuit of money, reputation, fame, temporary satisfaction of their senses, relationships, eating, killing animals for food, killing animals for the fur, and occupying another country by wars and atrocities to a lot of animals and all that. They are creating a lot of karma and they don't know about it. They don't want to get into the wisdom of a spiritual life. Of course, we have to live as usual, which we have a job, you have a family, and you continue your responsibility as a mom, as a dad, as your son, as a daughter. You continue that. But on the side, don't waste your time in partying. Don't waste your time on phone, on computers, on drinks, on eating. Spend your time in looking for wisdom. Spend your time in building up a road to Amitabha's Pure Land. And this sutra, 无量寿经, is about, what's the content of this? I can use about 5 minutes to explain the content of this sutra to you. I just explained this, but I would like to give you the content of this. This is about many, many eons of lives ago, in the ancient days. There was a Buddha, and his name is Avalokitesvara Raja. Guan 自在王佛的时代 Avalokitesvara Raja Buddha. At that time, there was a king, and this king was a fervent believer of the Buddhist teaching. So he practiced the Buddhist teaching. And later, he even gave up his throne to his son and became an ascetic. And later, he became a bhikshu, a monk. He didn't want all these luxuries of life, like Sakyamuni Buddha. And after practicing with unrelenting spirits and persistencies, he became a Bodhisattva. Not yet the Buddha. He became a Bodhisattva, and his name is Dhammakara, Fa Zhang. Bhikkhu, Dhammakara. And he continued to practice. In his practice, he made 48 vows. Why did practitioners or why did monks make vows? He made vows in order to get an objective, and that objective would guide him with unrelenting spirit to that objective. That's the reason why vows are important. If you don't have any vow, you don't make any vow, you can never get there. You still can practice, but you don't have fervent, firm resolve, a determination to go there. But if you make vows that really help you in your practice, so if you make a vow today, I want to chant 108 times Chittadarani, or in this lifetime I want to introduce the Buddha's teaching to 10,000 people, and I would like to make a record starting from tomorrow. So take an example, tomorrow you talk to Mr. Jackson and say, introduce him Buddhism, and say, okay, I'm interested, I'm coming to the temple to listen to a lecture. And then you put your name, I introduced Buddhism to Mr. Jackson, and he's interested in coming for a lecture, and this is my objective number one. I still have 99,999 people that I would like to introduce Buddhism to him. But that's a big vow. That's the vow that I made when I was a student at U of T. When I was a second year student at U of T, I always talked to myself, I didn't have money to do charity. A poor student wouldn't have too much money to do charity work. And then I questioned myself, do I really need money to do charity? And slowly I come to a realization. I said, I would like to introduce Buddhism to 100 people. And my job is to bring them to a temple so that they can listen to a monk, so that they get the wisdom, and they open the treasure door and they get into that door and they will be benefited by it. I don't need to give any money out, but I gave my efforts. So there's a lot of vows that you can make. And this monk made 48 vows. And all these vows is to save people, all sentient beings, by setting up a university. He wanted to set up a university of non-retrogression, a university that even though that person is not yet a Buddha, he can come to my university. I enroll him, enlist him. I will be teaching him until he becomes the Buddha. But I would use my power to get him out from reincarnation first. No more rebirth for him. No more life and death for him. He just come to my university and I'll be teaching him. So in other words, if we are practicing this approach, we are both using self-power and other power to achieve this destination. So he's making 48 vows, and all these vows are relating to helping sentient beings of the Dharma ending age. We are now in the Dharma ending age, where we are too busy with life. Imagine how many hours of meditation you can devote to enlightenment. You have your job, you have your family, you have a lot of responsibilities. In the ancient days, the monks, they didn't have to do anything else except meditation. Life was much simpler before than now. I always give an example. How many keys you carry in your pocket? I tell you, I almost have 100 keys. How many doors we have in the temple? You count the number of doors. Every door has a key, and how many keys I got? 100 keys. The complexity of a civilized world could be symbolized by the number of keys people usually carry. You at least carry 2 keys. How about your car keys? How about your jewelry deposit box in the bank? All these keys, all these identities to carry. Somebody have 10 credit cards and identity cards, and they have a wallet that thick. The complexity of the society is getting more and more serious. How can we practice to become enlightened in one's lifetime? We better go to that university. Right now, what concerns us going to lunch? So let's go to lunch.